Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome. My name's Alison Stewart and I'm your host of this session of Cut the Crop. And today I'm speaking with South Canterbury grower Andrew Darling. Hi Andrew, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine. Thanks, Alison.
Okay, great. So Andrew's one of our 4 Pathfinder farms, which is part of our Growers Leading Change initiative. But before we start talking about what it means to be a Pathfinder farm, Andrew, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your farming operation to begin with?
Yep, sounds good. So we're a 500 hectare arable farm just in the south end of Timaru. We just predominantly feed wheat, milling wheat, barley, oilseed rape, and some turf ryegrass as well, and some small amount of spring option every now and then, but predominantly autumn sown. And yeah, it's myself and my wife that have sort of third year into leasing off the parents, Joy and Warren. Yeah, it's pretty much where we are.
Yeah. So, I mean, you put your hand up to be a Pathfinder farm. And for those listeners who don't know what that is, it was basically an initiative as part of our Growers Leading Change extension platform, where we were looking for farmers that were interested in doing either a major transition in their management practice or the introduction of a new technology, and the FAR staff would support them in that transition. And then the grower would then share all of their learnings with the wider community. So why did you decide to sign up to be a Pathfinder farm?
I guess it was some things I was going to do on farm anyway. I was looking at, originally it was sort of probably around more the lighter touch approach, and just sort of using our synthetic inputs where they're needed and sort of monitoring where they go. And it sort of morphed a wee bit from there to focus more just on the confidence to cut back and in on nitrogen, because we've got some new tools and with soil testing and some variable rate technology and other sensing we can do during the growing season. So I was going to use these tools on farm anyway, and it was sort of to ratify for myself, and if I could share some of this knowledge with other growers, I thought that was a good thing, that and get some help from FAR and the rest of the research staff to put a bit more into science behind some of my on-farm tryouts, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the topic is looking at how to optimize, your nitrogen inputs. That's clearly, a fairly expensive input for your farming system. And you'd been playing around a little bit with variable rate applications, and you had also been playing around with the nitrogen sensor that Yara had available. So that was really the starting point, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I was probably, like you say, a very topical topic at the moment with the price of nitrogen in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. It is a big part of the costs of growing a wheat or barley crop. So, yeah, that's, and then using some of the tools that are available, like you mentioned, to really hone in on maximising the aim we're putting on and putting it on in the right place at the right timing.
So what exactly were your goals for year one? What were you trying to achieve in year one?
Ended up being that I'm pretty good at jumping feet in first with most things I want to try. And if I've got an idea that I think it's right, I'm pretty good at adopting across most of the farm and not actually saying, well, hold on, let's just make sure the changes that we've made have been right. So we had multiple strips in quite a few areas and different varieties of wheat as well, that were probably, if you want to call industry standard, of nitrogen applied flat rate at the usual timings of what we've known in the past, and then just taking that yield and also the grain test and everything at at harvest time and ensuring that what we were doing was getting the most effective yield from the nitrogen we were applying.
So the end sensor technology, what did that involve? What did you have to do?
So there was probably two tools that we were using. One, which was the leaf testing, which we every sort of 10 days to 2 weeks, we were testing the leaf of the plant to know what sort of nitrogen was moving through the plant and up into the new leaves. And then also with the end sensor that was on the tractor mounted and it will variably apply the fertilizer to different areas as it senses the nitrogen uptake, and if it needs some more, it will apply more from the fertilizer spreader.
So what came out of that first year? I mean, you were recording differences between the industry standard and the new technology that we're using. What kind of results did you get?
So there's two plots of wheat that we worked on, both feed wheat, Graham and Robusta. I had half a hectare that was best practice from what I could work out from my nitrogen tools versus the industry best standards. In the Graham, 50 more units of nitrogen was applied compared to what my tools told me. Across both of those plots, both had exactly the same yield of 13.4 tonnes, but there was a slightly increase in protein on that extra N applied. But being it was sold as feed, that it was no extra income to me. So, as far as that's concerned, that was nitrogen saved. In the Robusta trial, same sort of layout. It got in the industry standard, it got 60 more units of nitrogen compared to what my tools said. There was a slight reduction in yield using my tools compared to the industry standard. But when you take the cost of nitrogen off, that extra 60 units, it basically comes out exactly the same gross margin with the nitrogen removed.
Yeah. And I mean, if there's ever an emissions levy on NFERT, then that's where you would make a little bit of cost savings as well.
Yeah, and that's right. So it sort of worked out that both those plots, with the tools, it was sort of applied nitrogen of 200 units, which I was quite happy with because there was out of being a very wet winter. There was basically zero nitrogen in the soil when we did some deep ends before the start of applying any fertiliser. So my opinion, we've been quite efficient and had some pretty good yields.
So was it a hassle to do? I mean, from a practical point of view, or could you felt that you could just integrate the whole practice quite seamlessly into your normal management practice?
Yeah, it wasn't too strenuous. Like I say, we probably do a lot of testing and things on farm anyway with our leaf testing, and we're in a rotation of doing it. When it comes to putting the application of fertiliser on, we're usually in the paddock anyway. So on the tram lines that were at different rates, it just meant that making sure that the plan was followed. Luckily, they're all recorded by GPS, so I can ensure that they were done right, when sometimes it's not myself in the tractor. And then at harvest time, there was just a wee bit of extra faffing about, probably just making sure we GPS'd out the right areas to make sure we had an even trial and weighing them off. But like I say, I was probably going to do it myself on farm to know where I was gauge how we're doing with our nitrogen management, but to be able to pass that on to some other growers too, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what's the plan for this coming year? I mean, are you just doing the same again to see how reproducible it is, or are you making some changes?
Yeah, no, we basically sort of the same idea again. Sort of just comparing industry standard, I guess, if you want to use that word, versus what I can work out with the nitrogen tools. I think I may have, how I use some of the tools this year, I may have been a bit mean to the wheat and sort of got it a wee bit wrong. And I'm just looking at probably front loading my nitrogen applications a bit more this year. So I think there was a couple of learnings out of last year that I'm trying to work on this year to get right. And then that way I'll maybe tailor the end of my program a bit more and maybe even reduce my total N applied a wee bit further. And then on top of that, just a wee bit more soil testing. We sort of probably learned some critical areas that we probably didn't pick up to sort of get a better picture of where nitrogen's moving through the soil at different times. And in hindsight, we probably could have done a bit more post soil testing, like straight after harvest as well, just to sort of understand what nitrogen's there. And on top of our grain testing, also a bit of straw testing too, to understand whether that nitrogen is through the whole profile of cereal.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, I guess return on investment, because obviously you have to purchase the equipment, and I mean, maybe the little leaf tester is not too expensive, but once you start putting an end sensor, expensive bit of equipment on the top of your tractor, it's going to cost a bit of money. Are you sort of reasonably confident that the benefits that you're going to get will return, and you'll break even within a reasonable time frame?
Yes, I do. It's a difficult one to work out because coupled with especially the variable rate with the end sensor, there's a lot of soft benefits that are hard to work out. Like putting the nitrogen in the right place sometimes will give you an even stand of wheat and stop lodging and those sorts of things too. But they're really hard to sort of put a figure on. It's not all the time is it just a straight, reduction in nitrogen. So here you are, save $10,000, $20,000 or whatever in a season. So there's a lot of soft benefits there, but it's really hard to sort of extrude it all out. But I believe from sort of what I've been working out, within 2 years, we are getting some good return, return on investment with the sensor tool anyway.
I mean, the sensor technology can be used for more than just nitrogen applications. I mean, it has a broader range of benefits. So, I mean, over time, that technology is just going to become more and more useful.
Yeah, we're tapping into some of that now too with growth regulators, especially on our ryegrass crops too. We had some play around last year with it, but it's just sort of trying to, or how it integrates into the system. And what we've sort of been learning this year too, and we want to head in the future, is some variable rate seeding as well, with some of how our farm is laid with rolling ridges and sort of some sunny knobs and things like that. I think there's opportunity there to work on some variable rate seeding. How we create those maps is possibly just doing some recording with the sensor early on, so we're not actually using it to physically change any variable rates of the fertilizer spreader at that time, but just we're going over with the sprayer or putting some maintenance fert on, but using that sensor at that time to gain another image that we can use later on and adapt it with our yield maps and other things as well.
Yeah.
And have some pretty powerful technology and data moving forward, hopefully.
And do you see this being something that is going to become pretty mainstream over the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
The cost of nitrogen has, in the last sort of 18 months, has pushed a lot of people into it. And then when you couple that with some of the regulatory things that are happening, with not only in the arable but other agricultural industries, what they can and can't use with using nitrogen in the right place, and the whole environmental part of it, by being able to prove either that you have put it in the right place or maximise what you are allowed to use, I can see it just become more and more common, and it's being proven every year that it's working very well in New Zealand conditions.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you're doing this podcast, which is great. But one of the things with the Pathfinder Farms is that, we want to be able to host, on-farm, events. Have you had other growers coming to visit your farm to talk to them about what you're doing?
At about this time last year, we had sort of the first on-farm field day just to sort of talk about what the plan was for the Pathfinder farm and some of the tools and things that we were going to use and what we were going to try and achieve. About six weeks ago, we had a wrap-up on farm on what we achieved in the last 12 months with how we, what products we used and basically just what we went through in the last 15 minutes. And we had a good turnout of about 50 growers locally that come. And then I've also been down to Southland, and did the same thing with some 2 growers leading change groups down there, and sort of went through with what we've achieved with our nitrogen tools and what we're planning to do in the future.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're trying to do with, the Growers Leading Change initiative is, growers trying things out, with some support from FAR, and then, talking to the other growers about what's worked and what hasn't worked, and just trying to get that knowledge exchange, sort of extrapolated out. So thank you very much, Andrew, for talking to us about your Pathfinder farm, and good luck with what you're planning to do this year. Fingers crossed the weather will be kind.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.